Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, we're going to be breaking down the Tuesday, December 31st, 2024 slate of college football DFS. It is a kind of a hybrid slate where we've got 4 regular bowl games and then 1 college football quarterfinal that is serving as the nightcap on New Year's Eve. And I do think it's kind of odd that they did this little kind of, like hybrid day where, we've got both bowl games and a CFP game here on New Year's Eve. And then on New Year's Day, it's just only CFP games. But I'm not complaining because what that does for us is that gives us kind of one last big slate of the season here on New Year's Eve. Literally looking at the schedule, there will not be another slate bigger than 5 games with the remainder of this college football season. We're going to have to wait till next September to get one. So let's enjoy it while we have it, because personally, I like bigger slates better than smaller slates. I have a track record of performing better on bigger slates rather than smaller slates. So very much looking forward to this one, very much hoping that this is going to be a good one. Here on this episode, we're going to take a look at all 5 games. We're going to break them down, tell you what you can expect from each game, as well as who needs to be in or out of your DFS lineups on DraftKings, as well as FanDuel for each of these 5 games. Now, I do want to kind of get this out of the way. We are recording this here on a Sunday night. The games are on Tuesday, and bowl season's wild, y'all. It's wild. You never know who's going to declare for the draft, who's going to opt out, who is going to, come onto the field for pregame warmups and then run out of the tunnel in street clothes. Looking at you, Jaden Higgins. You just don't know what's going to happen. And, the fact that college football doesn't have any sort of regulations on opting out or injury disclosures or anything, just know that, it's kind of becoming more and more obvious with this territory with bowl season. Don't play any money in DFS that you're not willing to lose, because you just never know when you're going to get a random goose egg from somebody who opts out. And even if you do stay on top of the information as much as possible, you can still be fooled by an opt-out every now and then, because I know I was on Saturday. So, I'm trying to stay on top of all this information, but like I said, we're recording this 2 days out. So hopefully all this information is still relevant by Tuesday morning, but if not, just understand that going in. Anyway, we've got 5 games to break down. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. That way you can go ahead and be with us for the rest of the college football season, including the CFP games on New Year's Day, as well as the rest of the CFP as it goes on into January. But let's go ahead and dive into game number 1, the ReliaQuest. I will say over the next few days, there's going to be a lot of renamed bowls. In my childhood, I remember the Outback Bowl where, depending on who won, you either got a free bloomin' onion or a free coconut shrimp. And I remember the Capital One Bowl that had all the mascots, but those aren't a thing anymore, apparently. We've got some new bowl sponsors, so just bear with us. Some of them sound like memes rather than bowl games, but it is what it is. This one's the ReliaQuest Bowl. We've got Alabama taking on Michigan, which is 2 historic programs for a pretty crappy bowl game, if I'm being honest. Alabama's 13.5-point favorites with a game total of 43.5 points, meaning the implied total is about 23-15 in favor of the Crimson Tide. Now, I will say this. I think Alabama's going to win this game quite easily. I just don't see how Michigan scores any points. But what I think that's going to create, though, is I think that's going to create a game environment where Alabama is not going to necessarily play all that aggressive. They're not necessarily going to be kind of, freewheeling and dealing and scoring a whole lot of points, because they're just not going to have to win this game. A quarterback, they've got Jalen Milroe, who is supposedly playing in this game. As of right now, I haven't seen anything that indicates he's not. Apparently, he's going to declare for the draft, but he hasn't been declared out for this game. He's still, kind of in the lineup, practicing, doing his thing. That could change. Jalen Milroe has an upside when you look at his game log that no quarterback on the slate can match. However, I just don't really see him reaching that upside in this game environment against Michigan. Now I will say this. Michigan's a great defense, right? As flawed as they've been this season, they've been a great defense, but they're potentially missing some of their best defensive players in this one. Mason Graham is already gone. Their second best defensive player, Kenneth Grant, might be gone as well. So this is not a big, scary Michigan defense, but like I said, I just don't expect Milroe to have to score a whole lot of points and be super aggressive or do a whole lot in this one. So is he worth the price tag at $10,300? I don't think so, because you're going to need 30 DraftKings points for him to pay off value at that salary. And I just don't really see him getting there. I think you can play him just because on paper he does have the most upside. And I don't think that there's a whole lot of concern about salary on this slate. So if you do think he's going to be one of the highest scoring quarterbacks, you got nothing to lose by giving him a shot. But he's not going to be a guy that I'm going to be playing a whole lot. Now at running back, I am a big fan of Jalen Milroe on this slate. We've been talking about Alabama running backs all season long, how they've been a committee, and it is not allowed either back to reach their full potential in DFS. Well, Justice Haynes is in the transfer portal. Jam Miller is the only back left that's in that committee, and they have been pretty darn committed to only playing Miller and Haynes the entire season. So if this does mean that it's going to be 90% Jam Miller, then I think it stands to reason that Jam Miller is going to have a pretty good game. Last game against Auburn, they gave him all 28 times. He got 84 yards, did not score a touchdown, did not catch a pass, so it was only 8.4 DraftKings points. But I do think that this can be a high volume game for Jam Miller, and at $4,200, I think I'm willing to pay that for his salary. I'm going to be totally honest. I would not, I don't even know who to guess as for the next back after him. I mean, Richard Young's seen the most work this season, but it hasn't been super consistent. It's been more so in blowouts. I'm really probably just playing Miller. If you really think you want to take a guess on one of these backup backs and say, hey, they played a committee all season, it's going to be a committee again here in the bowl game, you can do that. It's probably not something I'm going to do. At the wide receiver position, I do actually kind of liked what's happened with Alabama in the bowl game. So basically, Alabama has two every down wide receivers, Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard. They're playing in the bowl game. They're going to be back. Williams is a freshman sensation, super talented. To me, he looks a lot like Victor Cruz on the field. He's their best big play wide receiver. He absolutely has upside at $6,700. Jeremy Bernard is transfer from Washington, came with Kalen DeBoer, high volume slot type of guy, doesn't score a lot of touchdowns. He's only scored 3 on the season, hasn't scored in his last 6 games, but he's going to play every down. He's going to see a ton of targets, and he knows the offense, and he's just a pretty consistent option in DFS. I think both of them are available as one-off plays or as stacking partners for Jalen Milroe. For the other receiver, a lot of the other guys who have been kind of rotational pieces for this Alabama offense have transferred out. The third starting receiver listed on the depth chart is Rico Scott at $3,400. If you want to roll the dice on that, go for it. But I'm more inclined to just play Williams or Bernard because I know that that's going to be their thing. And oh, by the way, if Milroe does in fact opt out, because of how DraftKings does pricing, their algorithm now prices the backup quarterback right behind the starter. So that way, if there ever is a late scratch for a starter, you don't get just a free square quarterback. Ty Simpson is $10,100. He's unplayable on DraftKings. I don't think he has the upside to pay off that salary because he's not Jalen Milroe. However, he is more of a pocket passer. And so what you could see is some increased passing volume because he's not going to be the runner that Jalen Milroe is. And it certainly makes Bernard and Williams a little more playable in my opinion. And oh, by the way, on FanDuel, Ty Simpson is down there at, I believe, $4,500. So he is worth a look on FanDuel, but not in play for me on DraftKings. On the Michigan side, like I said, I don't see how this team's going to score any points. They got Davis Warren as their starting quarterback. He's just, he's like every Michigan quarterback before JJ McCarthy. John O'Corn. What was the guy's name in 2016? Wilton Spate. He's like those guys. He's just not very good. He's a pocket passer. Doesn't have any rushing upside. I have no desire to play him at $5,100. If you faded him all season long, there hasn't been a single game where you've regretted it because he has a top 15 DraftKings points all season long. Alex Orji is apparently in the transfer portal, but is apparently playing in this game. He is more of a runner. He was their starter at the middle portion of the season. I don't know why they didn't continue to build around him. I continue to be disappointed in the fact that they failed to use his legs in innovative and creative ways and create a viable offense. I just think that they kind of misused their offensive personnel this season. Look, he might be their best runner available on Tuesday. It would not shock me if they lined up with him at running back because their running back situation is rough. Donovan Edwards is already out with some sort of injury. Khalil Mullings has declared for the draft. I don't see why he would play in this game. There hasn't been any official news that he is out, but I don't know why he would play if he's declaring for the draft. If he does play, he's in play. If he doesn't, then oh boy, I don't really know where to go because you got running back 3 Benjamin Hall who missed the Ohio State game. You've got Cole Cabana, the running back 4, who's already enrolled at Western Michigan. So I just don't know who's going to be carrying the ball for these guys if Mullings is out. And it's not like they want Davis Warren to throw it 30 times. So like I said, they might as well just play Alex Orji and just line him up as a quarterback and let him run. I just fail to see how this team's going to do a whole lot because after Mullings, Edwards, and Hall, I really don't know who it's going to be. And all 3 of them could all very well be out. At the wide receiver position, there's been a lot of opt-outs, a lot of draft guys as well. Frederick Moore is probably the most certain, going to play guy that could actually do something. But again, this is a low volume, ineffective passing offense. Samaj Morgan could be healthy as well. I don't know. Again, it's a low volume passing offense. You can totally pass on all the Michigan wide receivers. And you're probably going to be okay for it. All right, next up, we have the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl in El Paso between Louisville and Washington. There we go. There's a traditional bowl game, right? The Sun Bowl. We've got Louisville as 2.5-point favorites with the game total 49.5 points, meaning the implied total is about 26 to 24 in favor of the Cardinals. I kind of see this one going Washington's way, though. Let's talk about why. For Louisville, all season they'd had Tyler Shuck, who, in my opinion, is kind of underrated. And he is not playing in this game. Harrison Bailey is going to be the starter. He's $5,200 on DraftKings. You're getting a starting quarterback in an offense that is pretty quarterback friendly. However, Washington is one of the best pass defenses in the nation on paper. However, that's because they played a lot of Big Ten teams that are super ineffective at throwing the ball. So I do think that if I don't know what Harrison Bailey is. If he's actually good, he's going to smash. If he's just not any good, he's not going to smash. The guy that I want to play for Louisville, though, is their running back, Isaac Brown. So Isaac Brown is a freshman. He has been great this season. 4 of his last 5 games, he's been over 23 DraftKings points. And Washington is not a great run defense. They're ranked 74th in the nation in rushing yards allowed. And I think this could be a great spot for Isaac Brown to come in and have a big bowl game and really carry some positive momentum heading into next season. In my opinion, when price is considered, I think he's one of the top 3 clear best running back plays on the slate. If you want to get a little bit different, Duke Watson would be the spellback. Louisville's had a lot of other running backs either be hurt or enter the portal, so it's just going to be Brown and Watson in this game, and Watson's going to see some carries. At the wide receiver position, Louisville's wide receiver 1, Ja'Cory Brooks, is not listed on the depth chart for this game. I can't really find a whole lot of information why, but he's not on their depth chart, like the official one that's been released. What you see on the depth chart that's been released is Chris Bell, Colin Lacey, and Katoris Hicks as the 3 starters. Here's why this is interesting. Brooks has been their wide receiver 1 all season long. Super heavy volume guy. The Jeff Brom offense generally builds around one super high volume, super explosive wide receiver. This year it was Ja'Cory Brooks. Chris Bell has kind of been the wide receiver 2 as the season has come to an end, but this is a big play guy. He's been over double-digit DraftKings points in 4 straight games, and only one of them he caught more than 3 passes. In every single one of them, he caught a deep pass. So this could be a good spot for Chris Bell. It could also be a good spot for Colin Lacey. He was an elite receiver last year at South Alabama, transferred to Louisville, came in, got hurt. First healthy game was against Notre Dame. He had 5 for 71. I was on the next 3 shows, the next 3 weeks, talking about Colin Lacey and how you need to consider him as a value play, how he could break out. He could be a wide receiver 1. And then he ended up redshirting. Didn't play another game after the Miami game. Well, bowl games don't count against your red shirt. So apparently he is playing in this game. He's listed on the depth chart at $4,500. If this passing offense is to take off, he could absolutely take off with it. He was a bona fide wide receiver 1 at South Alabama. He could be that at Louisville, especially because there's no Ja'Cory Brooks to compete for targets with. And then Katoris Hicks was kind of another guy that came on strong as the season ended. Had a goose egg against Kentucky in the final game, but 6 for 63 against Pitt. If he's going to start, like I said at the top for this Louisville team, if the quarterback ends up being good, if Harrison Bailey is any good and this passing offense takes off, then these 3 wide receivers, Bell, Lacey, and Hicks, can absolutely take off with him. And if you're going to be playing Harrison Bailey, I do think you should stack him with at least one of those 3 wide receivers. Now, Washington's where this game gets a little weird. So I do think Washington's going to win this game because of Louisville not having Tyler Shuck. But they started Damon Williams against Oregon. Apparently, they didn't like what they saw because they're going back to Will Rogers. He is listed as the starter on the official bowl game depth chart. I don't know if he's going to finish the game, though. Like, they appeared pretty confident about, hey, we're going to go with Damon Williams in that Oregon game. And now they're going back to Rogers. I'm not on the coaching staff. I don't know what they saw. I don't know what happens on a weekly basis at practice, but I think it's weird that Rodgers is back to being the starter. It wouldn't shock me if he has a short leash. Louisville is a passing defense that you can beat, but Rodgers has got to be out there for all 4 quarters if he wants to beat it. So if you're confident that Rodgers is going to play well, then play him. But if you think that he's got any chance of getting benched, don't play him. At the running back position, they do have a workhorse running back. It is Jonah Coleman. Louisville is not a great rush defense, but they're not a bad one either. They're ranked 51st in the nation in rushing yards allowed. But what we do know with Washington is that Coleman is going to see the running volume, right? He really was ineffective against Oregon. Part of that was because of the quarterback change. They did use Damon Williams as a rusher quite a bit. So maybe, back to Will Rogers at quarterback, maybe Coleman could see a little bit of success. I don't think he's one of the top running back plays on the slate, but I think he's far from a bad play, if I'm being honest. At the wide receiver position, Washington does have a big three that play every snap of Boston, Jackson, and Hunter. They are all three in for this game. They are all three active. And it's just been kind of random all season long which one between Boston, Jackson, and Hunter is going to go off. Hunter's been the one that's gone off the least. But between Boston and Jackson, just take your pick. I don't really know how to discern between the two of them. The only way I'm playing them is if I'm playing quarterback Will Rogers. And like I said, that's probably not going to be a whole lot of lineups of mine that do, in fact, have Will Rogers. All right, game number 3 is between South Carolina and Illinois. This is an interesting one. This is the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl, which I do believe used to be the Capital One Bowl from my research. South Carolina is 10-point favorites with a game total of 49.5 points, meaning the implied total is about 30-20 in favor of the Gamecocks. For South Carolina, they have the quarterback on the slate that is probably going to be in the most total lineups of mine. That is Lenora Sellers. He's the real deal, in my opinion. Like, I think he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the nation for the next 2 years. And you need to start learning the name now. The kid can play. He's a dual threat. He has a ton of upside in DFS. In the last 5 games, he has had 4 over 36 DraftKings points. He is only $8,500. If he continues that streak, he absolutely has the upside to break the slate. And very few quarterbacks have that upside. So Lenora Sellers, probably my favorite quarterback play this slate. At the running back position, Rocket Sanders is not listed on the bowl game depth chart. And so what you have is you have an or on the depth chart between Oscar Adaway and Juju McDowell. Now, which one of those two ends up seeing more carries? Beats me. Adaway has seen more carries this season. McDowell was their spell back last year that was actually quite effective. Has not been super effective this year. So this is a pretty run-heavy offense, especially when you consider the fact that they use Lenora Sellers as a runner quite a bit. So either Adaway or McDowell, they're both going to be in play for me as kind of small pieces. If I can get a little bit more information before kickoff as to which one is the technical starter, that would certainly make me feel a lot more comfortable. But both of them are going to be parts of my player pool because you've got a run-heavy offense. With their workhorse running back out of the game, there's certainly a lot of carries to go around. At the wide receiver position, looking at their bowl game depth chart, I'm not kidding y'all. It was Or City. Like, just no clue who's going to be the receiver that breaks through. No clue who's going to be the receiver that plays the most. Like, it's been that way with this team all season long. None of these wide receivers are like super every down, every game contributors. There's not just a super consistent option in the receiving corps. Like looking at their depth chart, I'm going to kind of go through it real quick. The first wide receiver position is an or between Nick Harbor, Jared Brown, and Campbell. I don't know his first name. Dalevon Campbell. I don't know how you say his name, but it's Campbell, right? So Harbor, Brown, and Campbell split in one spot. And then the other spot is a or between Mazio Bennett Jr. and Peyton Mangrum and Luke Doty. So this is just all over the place, right? And then the third spot is a or between Gage Larvadane and Vendravius Jacobs. A lot of great names in the South Carolina receiving corps, by the way. But yeah, so like literally any of those 8 guys could end up being the wide receiver that ends up playing well, right? And then, oh, by the way, you've got 2 starting tight ends in Simon and Smith. So just no clue who's going to be the breakthrough wide receiver on this team. I have no problem if you just want to play Lenora Sellers and unstack him and just say, I'm avoiding this situation entirely. If you were to try to pick one, here's my recommendation. Jared Brown is the best of them from what I've seen. He's Coastal Carolina transfer. He was great there. He's an explosive player. He's a fast player. That'd be my lean. You also have the tight end, Joshua Simon, who's been pretty consistent in Lenora Sellers going on this run. He had 4 of his last 5 games over 13 DraftKings points. I think he's a pretty consistent option as well. And then Nick Harbor, like, dude's just a freak athlete. If you've ever played a college football video game, he's got 99 speed. He's 6'4". He's just a ridiculous athlete, but he's been quite disappointing this season in terms of his production, but it's come on a little bit as of late. So those would kind of be the guys that I would lean to. But again, I would not fault you for just saying I'm avoiding this situation. I'm going to be playing Lenora Sellers unstacked. All right, now on the Illinois side, Luke Altmaier is going to be playing in this game. From everything I have read, he's got a little bit of mobility, but not much. He also has some sneaky upside. He's got 2 games this season over 33 DraftKings points. So this absolutely could be a situation where Altmaier could play well. The South Carolina defense is kind of been hit or miss this season. They're not super great, in my opinion. So I do think that this could be an interesting spot to play Altmaier. Salary of $6,600 is certainly quite appealing. I think a game stack with Sellers on one side and Altmaier on the other is actually really appealing, and I will be playing a little bit of that way. Now for Illinois at running back, Caden Fegan, their kind of workhorse, huge running back, is out. He hasn't played since week 5. Apparently, I feel like he played since then, but DraftKings doesn't have any games since week 5. So their starters since then have been a mixture of Josh McCray and, I hope I say this correctly, Aiden Laffery or Laffery. Laffery's kind of been the more effective of the two. Against Northwestern, ran for 172 yards. But the problem is that they've been splitting carries, and it's kind of hard to advocate for two backs that are splitting carries when you can just play a workhorse running back on some of these other teams. So I'm probably going to play a little bit of Laffery, but not a whole lot. At the wide receiver position, Pat Bryant is out for this game. He's declared for the NFL draft, and he has been like a super high volume receiver as the year's gone on. The only other consistent option in this receiving core all season long has been Zachary Franklin. He's a UTSA transfer. He's pretty talented. He's had some good games this year. I will be playing a lot of Zachary Franklin because I think what's going to happen is this offense lacks other elite target earners. And so I think that with Bryant being out, Franklin's going to have a lot of targets. Franklin's going to have a huge role in this game, and I think he is a very easy piece to play from this game at a salary of only $4,400. I think he should be at least $5,000. All right, that's going to do it for the first 3 games. Let's take a quick breather, and then let's move on to the last 2. Now, before we continue, I do want to mention there are places where you can get more information from me. First off, you can follow me on Twitter at Mike's Money Picks. I'm more than happy to answer any questions if you reach out to me. Like I said earlier, I'm recording this on a Sunday night, and the games don't kick off until Tuesday. So, if there's some late opt-out news, changing in player status, something you want to get my updated thoughts, just reach out to me. I'm more than happy to answer. And also follow me so that way you can make sure to get all updates for the show on there as well. Also, I'm in the Fantasy Corner Discord. Link is in the description on YouTube as well as on the audio feed. Basically, the Fantasy Corner Discord is a community of a lot of really smart, really good people who play DFS for a lot of different sports. And if you're looking for people to talk lineups, talk strategy, just talk plays with, head on over to the Fantasy Corner Discord. It's 100% free. And the college football chat in there has been jumping. And if you play DFS for NFL, NBA, college basketball as well, the chats in there are super active as well. So if you're just looking for people to talk with and just hang out, it's a great time. And then also, if you want to know who actually makes all of my college football DFS lineups, head on over to the Patreon, patreon.com/Mike's Money Picks. What I do for every single college football DFS slate is I post my core plays as well as why they're my core plays. So that way you not only get the information, but you kind of get the why behind it. I can't just sit here and guarantee that you can plug those guys in and win thousands of dollars. It's not that easy. It's not how it works. And anybody who promises you that is lying to you. What I can promise is that you can get some insight from somebody who understands the X's and O's of college football, who understands the game theory of DFS, and can help you improve your process at college football DFS. All right, let's go ahead and continue on with game number 4, the Kinder's Texas Bowl between LSU and Baylor. Baylor is 3.5-point favorites with a game total of 59.5 points, meaning the implied total is about 31-28 in favor of the Baylor Bears. So on the Baylor side, we've got quarterback Sawyer Robertson. He is playing in this game. He's been good. Like, he's been deceptively good. And what I like about him is when he hits big. So like just this season, he has 4 games over 30 DraftKings points at a salary of $8,000. That's pretty substantial. He has a little bit of rushing upside, nothing like Lenore Sellers, but it's enough that he can get you a few points on the ground. And this is the best game environment of the slate. It's the highest game total of the slate. So I really do like Sawyer Robertson here at $8,000. He's a guy who's certainly going to make my player pool. And we know that this LSU pass defense is quite suspect. So I think this is a really good spot for Robertson. I also think this is a good spot for freshman running back Bryson Washington. So we've been kind of lamenting over the course of the season how Baylor had been employing a running back committee. Well, it is a committee no longer. Since week 9 in their last 5 games, Bryson Washington has seen the lion's share of the workload. He's gone over 17 carries in all 5 of those games. He's gone over 100 yards in 4 of those games, and he's gone over 50 DraftKings points in 2 of them. No running back on the slate has the upside of Bryson Washington. I am cool playing him as a one-off piece on the Baylor side. I'm cool playing him with Sawyer Robertson. I'm cool playing him with a game stack of the LSU side. I think, to me, when price is considered, I think he is the top running back play on the slate. I have him and Isaac Brown and Ashton Genty, more on him in a second, as my top 3. I think that this is a great spot for Bryson Washington. He's going to be in a ton of my lineups. At the wide receiver position, this is where Baylor gets tricky because it's like, there's no predictability from week to week as to which Baylor receiver is going to go off. The best one over the course of the season has been Josh Cameron. And again, in the Kansas game, he was the best. He went 8 for 102 and a touchdown. It was his second in his last 3 games where he went over 24 DraftKings points. Is he going to do that again, though? I don't know. He might. He might. Ashton Hawkins did not play against Kansas, or I'm sorry, he did play, but like he got hurt in the game and didn't return. That's what I should have said. Didn't finish instead of didn't play. That was poor wording on my part. He did not finish the Kansas game. Prior to that, he had been pretty good. I don't know what his status for this one is. I can't find anything on him. Michael Trigg is the tight end. He's a mismatch. He's pretty good at football, but super inconsistent week-to-week production. Hal Presley is a guy who plays pretty much every down for this Baylor team. Great in the middle of the season. He had a stretch where he's 5 games in a row over 10 DraftKings points at a salary of $3,100, but just not consistently producing as of late. I just don't know at $3,100. And then you have Monterey Baldwin, the speedster. He is a senior. This will be his last game. Back-to-back games over 17 DraftKings points, deep touchdowns in both of them, 7 for 119 and 2 touchdowns against Kansas. I don't know if he's going to do that again. Like I said, really, it's just a week-to-week thing with this Baylor team, and it just stinks because you really want to stack Sawyer Robertson. I feel like he's at his best when he is stacked, but just between Cameron, Hawkins, Presley, Baldwin, you just don't know who it's going to be. If I had to pick, I'm kind of intrigued by Baldwin at 3K because he is a senior. He's been in this program forever. I think they're going to kind of try to give him some shine here in this game. That's just my hunch. On the LSU side, they've got quarterback Garrett Nussmeier. And let's go through the checklist of if the guy is a pocket passer, do I want to play him in DraftKings? So if he's a pocket passer, does he have upside to get 300 passing yards? Yes, he's done it in 2 of his last 5 games and 5 of the 6 before that. So he's done it 7 times this season. Yes, he has the upside to be a 300-yard passer. Is he in a great game environment? Yes. 59.5 point total, highest in total to slate, team total of 28 points. Yes. Does he have clear stacking partners? Let's get to that part in a little bit. That's kind of the toughest part with Nussmeier, and the salary of $9,100 is also tough to swallow as well. You're going to need 28 DraftKings points from him in order to justify that salary, which he has done 5 times this season, 5 out of 12. It's like not great for that, but I do think he does have the upside to hit. He is a quarterback who is going to make my player pool. At the running back position, they've got freshman Caden Durham, who has kind of taken over as the lead back. He's been the most productive. He hasn't really had an explosive game since the Arkansas game, though, but he is an explosive player. He is very fast. I think he's worth a look at $6,300, but when you consider cost, when you consider that he is probably going to split a little bit of carries with Josh Williams and Caleb Jackson, he's probably not the best cost-adjusted play on the slate, but like if you want to be different with a lot of people playing Nussmeier and a lot of people playing the LSU receivers, he would be a way to get different, in my opinion. At the wide receiver position, so we have been bemoaning all season long how Kyron Lacey eats up a ton of targets that are low leverage. What do I mean by that is he doesn't score a ton of touchdowns. He doesn't get a ton of deep targets, but he gets a lot of targets, and it really kind of made the rest of the wide receivers tough to play because after Kyron Lacey, it was a huge rotation of receivers, and you never really knew who was going to be the, kind of the chosen one on a given week, right? Well, here's what happened in the time since LSU has last played. Kyron Lacey has declared for the NFL draft. He will not play in this game. And one of those rotational wide receivers, CJ Daniels, is already committed to Miami. He will not play in this game. So you're losing the target hog. You are losing one of the, rotational pieces. And so you're going to see some of these other rotational pieces step forward to bigger roles. Aaron Anderson has been the second most productive receiver for LSU on the course of the season. And he tends to get a little more deep targets, a little more explosive plays than Kyron Lacey. So $5,700, if he's going to see an uptick in targets, he's absolutely going to be worth paying up for and probably is the preferred stacking partner with Garrett Nussmeier. But you're also going to see Chris Hilton Jr. active for this one. He had not been active at all until week 9. Even then, he missed a few games after that. And then against Oklahoma, he catches 2 touchdowns, 1 for 45 yards, 1 for 40 yards. If he's able to do one of that again, he absolutely is going to be a guy that you're going to need in your lineup, $3,700. And then Xavier Thomas is, in my opinion, going to be the next one up. Hasn't been a super productive player this year, but if he's a full-time receiver, then he's going to have a lot of opportunities in this pass-happy offense. And then, oh, by the way, tight end Mason Taylor, $3,200. That's super cheap considering that there's going to be a ton of unproven receivers around, Mason Taylor. He could very well see an uptick in targets, especially with those short intermediate routes that Kyron Lacey was eating up a lot of. Some of them could go to Mason Taylor. So I do think that if I'm playing Nussmeier, he's going to be stacked with at least one of his wide receivers. And if you asked me to rank it in terms of upside, it would be Anderson first. In terms of safety, it would probably be Mason Taylor first. All right, last game of the day is going to be a fun one. Penn State versus Boise State in what they are calling the College Football Playoff Quarterfinal at the Fiesta Bowl. And if you guys know your college football history, fun things happen when Boise State is in the Fiesta Bowl. So Penn State is 11.5-point favorites over Boise State with a game total of 53.5 points, meaning the implied total is about 32-21 in favor of Penn State. So let's get this out of the way. Everybody was critical of the college football playoff first round because it was a lot of blowouts. It's accurate. It was. It's not because the committee was picking the wrong teams. It's because the committee set up the bracket in a way that was conducive to creating blowouts. The fact that the 4 conference champions get a bye mean that you're not putting the 4 best teams through to the bye. And so what you ended up with in the first week of the college football playoff was you had 4 of the 6 best teams in the bracket, no matter how you want to shake it out. Notre Dame, Penn State, Texas, and Ohio State are 4 of the 6 best teams in the bracket. They were beating up on 4 of the 5 worst teams in the bracket. You didn't get even matchups. You didn't get the worst teams in the bracket fighting for the next spot in the round. So it's a format that's conducive to blowouts, and I hope that they change it so that way we get more competitive games. Because what's going to happen is the fact that Boise State and Arizona State got a bye, you could potentially see 2 blowouts in this round as well. I hope that it doesn't happen. I don't think that this one is going to be a blowout, but just know going in that there's a chance that could happen because there's a chance that Penn State just might be a lot better than Boise State. Now, the argument against a blowout would be the fact that both these teams played Oregon to 1-possession games, would be the fact that Penn State doesn't blow out a whole lot of teams, and the fact that they got 2 pick sixes early against SMU totally turned the tide of that game, and the fact that it was at Penn State totally turned the tide of that game. So I do think that there's a compelling argument to be made that this might not be a blowout, and this might be a super competitive game environment. And if it is, I think you're going to see a lot of scoring. I fail to see a way where this game doesn't see a lot of points scored. If you were asking me for a betting angle on this game, I would be taking Boise State to cover. I would be taking the game total to go over 53.5, but I would be taking Penn State to win. That's my opinion on the game environment as a whole. Now, let's talk about it in terms of DFS. So, Drew Allar, Penn State's quarterback. I was banging the drum to play Drew Allar a lot in that SMU game. And what we ended up seeing was we didn't get what we were hoping for because Penn State scored with the 2 defensive touchdowns, took a massive early lead, and Penn State could basically just sit on the ball. They did not throw the ball a ton. They did not throw the ball deep a ton at all. And Allar just never really got loose, only put up 6 DraftKings points. And in fact, if I'm being honest, I totally botched that first game in my analysis because the 2 pick sixes just totally turned it on its head, right? And fortunately for me, back on that slate, that DFS slate, I had a ton of Will Howard, Jeremiah Smith stacks that totally saved my day. But I had a lot of Allar stacks that were about to ruin it. So anyway, what might happen to Allar in this game? If this game turns into a shootout, then you have Drew Allar with 30-point upside like he did against Oregon, quite frankly. That's just how I see it. If this game turns into one where Penn State plays from ahead or where Penn State's defense does the scoring, Allar's not going to get there. If this game turns into a shootout, he will. And so I think that that's going to be the angle you're going to want to play is if you play Drew Allar, you want to be playing multiple pieces from this game because I think that for Allar to get there, it means that the game environment is going to have to get there. And that's how I'm going to be playing Drew Allar in DFS. At the running back position, Singleton and Allen have my intrigue. Boise is a really good run defense on paper, but they're playing against Mountain West teams, most of whom, with the exception of UNLV, don't really want to beat you by running the football, and Penn State does. Boise actually is the worst in the nation at missed tackle rate. You know who forces a lot of missed tackles? Nick Singleton. And Nick Singleton, if he forces some missed tackles, can make you pay. He ended up scoring 17.7 DraftKings points in that game against SMU by virtue of scoring a touchdown. And he was pretty effective on the ground, 14 for 90. I think this is a pretty good spot for him. I think he's a little pricey at $7,500. I would rather try to find an extra $1,000 to play Bryson Washington. I would rather pay down a little bit to play Isaac Brown. But if you already have one of those guys in your lineup, I think Singleton makes a lot of sense. And I think that, he absolutely could break off some explosive runs that could really turn the tide in the favor of Penn State. Now, his committee mate, Katron Allen, we've talked about all season long how this is nearly a 50-50 split. Well, in the game against SMU, Allen saw slightly less carries than Singleton, but he scored 2 touchdowns. So he scored more DraftKings points, 23.8. If that's going to be the scenario again, where Allen's going to be the one getting the work at the goal line and in the red zone, then you got to feel pretty good about playing him too, right? I wouldn't play Singleton and Allen together, but both of them are certainly going to make my player pool. Like I said, this Boise run defense on paper is pretty good, but I worry about them being able to tackle these two Penn State running backs, who are the best running backs that they're going to have seen all year long. At the wide receiver position, here's what's sneaky about Penn State. There's only two guys I'm considering. It's Tyler Warren and it's Harrison Wallace. Harrison Wallace had 4 catches against SMU for 48 yards. This is, again, the thing where I talked about with Drew Aller, where if this game environment takes off, Harrison Wallace is probably going to have a pretty big day. $4,300, he's probably going to really pay off that price tag. He's an every down receiver. None of these other guys have shown any kind of upside at all. He's the guy that I would want at the wide receiver position. Tyler Warren is Penn State's tight end. Targeted 6 times, caught 4 of them for 33, 1 rush as a Wildcat quarterback, only 7.9 DraftKings points against SMU, ended up being totally bad chalk on that college football playoff opening round slate. I played him a ton. I'm going to be playing him a ton here in this one. To me, he's the best overall option at the wide receiver position on DraftKings on this slate. When you think about Boise having that high missed tackle rate, who's really good after the catch? It makes a lot of guys miss, runs a lot of guys over. Tyler Warren. Who is effective as a Wildcat quarterback as a runner? Tyler Warren. So I think this bodes well for him as well. And I do think you can play him without Aller. I think you can play him without Allen or Singleton. I think you can play him as a one-off. I think you can play him as a part of a Penn State stack, as a game stack, whatever. He's a great play on DraftKings, in my opinion. On the Boise State side now, we know who we're going to talk about. Look, we're going to get to him in a second. Let's talk about Maddox Madsen, BYU's quarterback. Boise's quarterback. Why did I have a Freudian slip and call him BYU there? So Maddox Madsen is Boise's quarterback. He's been pretty good. When you look at his game log over the course of the season, he's very much in a similar situation to Drew Aller is, where he's very much going to need a shootout, or he's going to need Boise to score a ton of points. He doesn't really produce when Boise scores like 21 points, because if Boise only scores 21, that means Genty's probably getting 2 of the touchdowns, and there's just not a whole lot of upside for Madsen, right? You're going to need him to put up a lot of points if you want him to be a successful DFS play. Now, here's what worries me about Madsen. So the games he has been at his best are when teams just totally shell out to stop Ashton Genty. They load the box up, and it just creates these one-on-ones on the outside, and Madsen's able to make them pay, right? I don't know if Penn State needs to load the box up, because Penn State's dudes in the box are going to be better than these Mountain West teams that Boise has played dudes in the box. So I don't know if Penn State necessarily has to put 8 or 9 in the box to stop Genty. If they do, creates a good environment for Madsen. Again, very similarly to Drew Aller, I'm probably going to be deploying him as a game stack play, not as a one-off quarterback play. Ashton Genty, let's talk about him. He's great. Should have won the Heisman Trophy, in my opinion. He would have had my vote. He's priced down significantly on DraftKings. He's all the way down to 10-9, which is absolutely playable. You're going to need him to put up 33 DraftKings points to pay off his price tag, which is something that he does in his sleep. Against Oregon, he put up 43. So he absolutely could do it against Penn State. But again, the issue is this is the best run defense he's going to have seen all season long. But he's Ashton Genty. So, just how much do you trust Genty's talent is the bottom line. I think he can do it. I think if Boise State is going to win this game, he's going to have to do it. And if this game ends up being a shootout back and forth, I think that plays into Genty's favor, because I think it means that Genty is breaking off long runs or punching in, touchdowns from the red zone, right? So I think he's a pretty solid play at 10-9, and I do think there's enough value on the rest of this slate. We've talked about plenty of guys on this slate that are cheap that will allow you to play Genty at 10-9. He's not this is a hard word to say for me, a back-breaking play at 10-9 like he was at 14-3 a few weeks ago. So Genty's absolutely going to be in my player pool. I'm going to be playing him quite a bit as a part of a one-off play, as a game stack play, just whatever. He's going to be in my lineups. At the wide receiver position, Boise has started to get a little bit easier to read at the wide receiver position. Basically, Camper, Caples, and Lauder, the tight end, are going to play every down. Strachan and Bolt are going to be like these rotational players, right? So Camper is the Indiana transfer. He's pretty good, but he's like a low average depth of target, not a big touchdown scorer, volume dependent play. He's not really my type of play. I would rather play Latrell Caples, who has shown some upside this year. He had 33 DraftKings points against San Diego State. That was a game where they tried to load the box to prevent Genty from scoring, and that was when Caples went off. I think if you're going to be stacking Maddox Madsen with anybody, Caples will be the guy. If you're going to be looking to play a one-off play, Capels would be the guy. That's just my preferred option in this Boise receiving core. Matt Lauder, the tight end, has been pretty consistently involved in the passing attack. 3 of his last 5 games, he's been double-digit DraftKings points. Not really like a huge upside game. He did have 2 early in the season, but those were against Portland State and Washington State. Much different quality of defense here in this one than those two. But it's certainly in play at $3,400 if you are looking to play some Boise stacks. So that does it for all 5 bowl games. Well, I guess all 4 bowl games and the college football quarterfinal game for the Tuesday slate. If this video helped you guys out in any way, please hit the like button on YouTube. Please rate and review the audio. It helps me out a ton when you guys do that. I cannot stress that enough, how much I appreciate it. And make sure you subscribe to the channel. That we can be with us for tomorrow's episode, which is going to be the New Year's Day 3 college football playoff quarterfinal games. And then for the rest of the college football season, which does include the college football playoff as well. So make sure you subscribe so you can stick around for that. But y'all, that's going to do it for this episode. If you could not tell by just kind of my general delivery and vibes, I'm super excited for this New Year's Eve slate. Like generally like little personal here. So generally what happens for me is my wife's grandfather's birthday is New Year's Eve. So we generally all go out to dinner for, to celebrate his birthday. But, everybody kind of heads back to their own house pretty early. So I end up kind of back on my couch watching college football by about 8 o'clock, and just whatever college football games on New Year's Eve, that's what I'm watching up until the ball drops. And I kind of love it. So that's going to be what I'm looking forward to this New Year's Eve. And, I love the fact that it's going to be a college football playoff game. So very much looking forward to it, and hope you guys are as well. Hopefully this video gave you guys the information to build some good DraftKings and FanDuel lineups for this Tuesday night slate. Anyway, that's gonna do it here for this episode, guys. Best of luck to you guys on the Tuesday night slate. Thank you guys for watching and listening to this point, and I will see you guys next time.